In contrast to yesterday, it is a bright, sunny, and warmer day out today. So I was actually outside putting mulch down, enjoying the sun. My cat was enjoying laying in the sun earlier today. If you saw the posts on my posts tab, otherwise known as community tab. But we are here to go through what will be the last part in the Nahum series, and we'll go through chapters 2 and 3. Both of these just talk about continued destruction. And there's really not more to say about it than that. The burden of Nineveh, again, is how the book is titled in chapter 1, verse 1, and that is the destruction of the city. So that's what we're going to encounter through the whole book, the 3-chapter book. I would definitely encourage you to watch the intro and then part 1 and then this. So if you're starting here, I wouldn't advise it because there's a lot of background and kind of setup work that I went through to understand the relationships between other books, major, minor prophets, some Psalms stuff, where we are, not just related to history and the fall of the Assyrian Empire, but also prophecy, because Nineveh is tied to one of the cities that is destroyed in finality at Jesus' second coming. And so I went through all of the scriptures to link all of that together. So if you missed one or both of those previous parts of the Nahum series, I would encourage you to watch that first. Watch those first. But we're just going to start right in here. And this is going to be talking about Jesus, obviously, again. In chapter 2, verse 1, he that dasheth in pieces is come up before thy face. This is Revelation 19. Dasheth in pieces as a potter's vessel. It's actually partly in Revelation 19, but more specifically in Revelation 2, also talking about Revelation 19, and it comes from Psalm 2 of the second coming. It says, out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fiercest and wrath of Almighty God. What I was actually thinking about was Revelation 2. He shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers. So that's what he dasheth in pieces is talking about. And Psalm 2 is coming to mind too. Yep, this is where the original prophecy comes from that Revelation picks up on. Psalm 2, verse 8, ask of me, I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. So it's clearly related to the second coming and things that Jesus will do as he treads the winepress. So we know that this is a second coming reference right off the bat because it's talking about Jesus and things that he's prophesied to do at the second coming. He that dasheth in pieces is come up before thy face. Keep the munition, watch the way, make thy loins strong, fortify thy power mightily. For the Lord had turned away the excellency of Jacob, as the excellency of Israel, for the emptier have emptied them out and marred their vine branches. Obviously, there's going to come a time in probably the very near future where Israel is, I would say, brought low in a couple of different ways. But it's Daniel's 70th week, and it's a period of 7 years of judgment reserved for Israel because of their transgressions against God. Specifically in rejecting Jesus at the conclusion of the first 69 weeks of years upon the triumphal entry. There is a 7-year period reserved for the judgment of Israel because of their faithlessness, and that is the excellency of Jacob, the excellency of Israel brought low, the marring of those branches. And the prophecy is partly tied to Romans 11, what John talks about. So we'll bring Old and New Testaments together talking about this. And I'm just going off the cuff, so I'm not sure what I'm going to say until it comes out of my mouth, as usual. Romans 11. If some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree, So that's talking about the natural branches being broken off because of faithlessness. But because of unbelief, they were broken off. And then we were, under new covenant, invited to participate in kingdom promises by grace through faith. But it says in verse 23 of Romans 11, and they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. So what it's talking about is the vine. Jesus is the vine. We are the branches. Like John 15. I am the true vine, my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that they may bring forth more fruit. So Jesus is the vine, and we are the branches. So when it's talking about the marring of the vine branches, it's talking about the judgment of the branches, the natural branches, which is Israel. And as Romans 11 said, if they continue not still in unbelief, that God is able to graft them in again. So clearly we're talking about end times, and we're talking about things against Israel, specific reasoning wise given in the New Testament. But there's going to be an outstanding period of time reserved for judgment against Israel because of their faithlessness. They will come to faith, and if they continue not still in unbelief, God is able to graft them in again. Graft them into the root because they're the branches and Jesus is the vine. So continuing on in Nahum 2:3. The shield of his mighty men are made red, the valiant men are in scarlet. The chariots shall be with flaming torches in the day of his preparation, and the fir trees shall be terribly shaken. The day of his preparation. I'm not sure if that's actually in another verse or not. Let me check. It is not. I just looked it up on Bible Gateway. That seems like it was in something else, but I'm probably thinking about the day of preparation of the Passover from the book of from the Gospels, which it is not talking about that. This is talking about the day of his preparation, the day that Jesus is coming back. As I have stated many, many times, it is an appointed time, not a feast appointed time, but an appointed time means it's set in stone. It cannot speed, it cannot slow. We learn this several different times. 3, behold, I come quickly in Revelation 22. That means without unnecessary delay. Cannot be sped, cannot be slowed, cannot be changed. There is a set in stone date for it. It is the day of his preparation, the day of his second coming. The chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings. He shall recount his worthies. They shall stumble in their walk. They shall make haste to the wall thereof, and the defense shall be prepared. The gates of the river shall be opened, and the palace shall be dissolved. So this is where you kind of get into some of the history and some of the prophecy. Like there was a fall of the Assyrian Empire historically, and so it's going to have implications in the past, but also in the future. And how we know that this is going to be related to the future is because there's a reference to cankerworms, locusts, grasshoppers. That's Joel. So this is how we know that while it might have implications with the past also, there is meaning for prophecy in the future, and it's going to be tied to these essentially what are supernatural beings. It's the locust army from Revelation that gets released out of the bottomless pit in conjunction with the 100 million man army, trumpets 5 and 6. So those are the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the locust, the grasshoppers that are destroying the land of Israel before it's a green, and behind it's like flames of fire and destruction. They're leaving devastation in their wake as they progress toward Jerusalem. And that's when the Lord will be jealous for his land and pity his people, when he brings them to Jerusalem in the Kidron Valley to dispense with all of them. So there's a lot of ties here, and we'll get into that more clearly in Nahum 3, where we'll bring in the prophet Joel to talk about that and the timeliness of what that's discussing. So like I said, this is kind of, these verses here kind of underlies the point where there was a destruction of the Assyrian Empire and the palaces and stuff like that. There's ruins in, like I said, the modern day city of Mosul in Iraq is ancient Nineveh. There's ruins there. There was a destruction of the Assyrian Empire. But what it's talking about here is more prophetic than it is historical. Verse 7. And Hazab shall be led away captive. She shall be brought up, and her maid shall lead her, as with the voice of doves, tabering upon their breasts, beating upon their breasts. But Nineveh is of old like a pool of water. Yet shall they flee away. Stand, stand, shall they cry, and none shall look back. Take ye the spoil of silver, take the spoil of gold, for there is none end of the store and glory out of all the pleasant furniture. She is empty and void and waste. The heart melteth, the knees smite together, and much pain is in all loins, and the faces of them gather blackness. That's talking about desolation. This is also in the book of Joel regarding, I was like, where's Joel? Yeah. This is similar language to the army that I was just describing in these verses about the chariots and the battle and the defenses and all of that stuff. Joel 1 is where it talks about the locust army that destroying the land of Israel before and behind and all that stuff. But Joel 2 is where you've got similarity of that army. So this is talking about the approaching of the day of the Lord in Joel 2:1. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. As the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, there hath never been the like, neither shall there be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. So they devour and destroy everything as they proceed up to and including when they get to Jerusalem, and Jesus comes back to put a stop to that. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. That's going to be your link to Trumpet 6. Like the noise of chariots on the top of the mountain shall they leap, the noise of the flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their faces the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one in his ways, they shall not break rank, neither shall anyone thrust another. They shall walk everyone in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city, shall run upon the wall, they shall climb upon the houses, they shall enter in at the windows like a thief. Now that's talking about Jerusalem. Clearly this in Nahum is talking about Nineveh. So you're talking about two very different cities, but there's very much similarity of language. So it's talking about, I'll repeat those verses now, having Joel in context for similarity's sake. Again, you're talking about two very different cities, but similarity of language as far as what's going to happen to them. Nahum 2:3. The shield of his mighty men is made red. The valiant men are in scarlet. The chariots shall be with flaming torches in the day of his preparation. The fir trees shall be terribly shaken. The chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings. He shall recount his worthies. They shall stumble in their walk. They shall make haste to the wall thereof, and the defense shall be prepared. So it is similarity of language. Continuing on, in verse 10, she is empty and void and waste. The heart melteth, the knees smite together, much pain is in all the loins, and the faces of them all together blackness, which is what Joel 2:6 says of this locust army regarding Jerusalem. Before their face the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. Verse 11, where is the dwelling of the lions, and the feeding place of the young lions, where the lion, even the old lion, walked, and the lions whelped, and none made them afraid? The lion did tear in pieces enough for his whelps, and strangled for his lionesses, and filled his holes with prey, and his dens with torn flesh. Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will burn her chariots in the smoke, and the sword shall devour thy young lions, and I will cut off thy prey from the earth, and the voice of thy messengers shall no more be heard. Jesus says, I will do this. Clarity of purpose as far as what this is talking about. Jesus is going to do that. Cause it to occur. Nahum 3:1. Woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. The noise of a whip, and the noise of the rattling of the wheels, the noise of the prancing horses, and of the jumping chariots. The horseman lifteth up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. Sounds awful like the treading of the winepress of the fierceness, the wrath of Almighty God. That's where blood comes up to the horse's bridle by the space of 1,600 furlongs. I don't know that Nineveh would be on the path of that, but it's similarity of language about city destruction. I'm going to look. I don't think so. I'm sure that Nineveh, Mosul, would not be on the path to that. Yeah, it's not. It wouldn't be in that 1,600 furlongs. But again, we're not talking about Jerusalem specifically, we're talking about Nineveh, so that would make sense. But again, similarity of language regarding the destruction of the city and obviously the wicked people that are there. So the horseman lifted up both the bright spear and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses. There is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. That obviously has ties to Revelation in 17, the woman who rides the beast, who is Babylon, but that she influences all of the other cities again to anti-God. So that's clearly going to be similarity of language to Revelation 17 and 18, which is the last thing that occurs before Jesus comes back, the destruction of Babylon itself. In verse 5, Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. Remember that nakedness is a consequence of uncovered sin. It's uncovered shame, shame being a consequence of sin. This goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, when Adam sinned and Eve also. They knew that they were naked, and they tried to cover themselves with fig leaves, which is insufficient to save. But then God clothed them with the lambskins, forward looking to the sacrifice of Christ, who covers the shame of nakedness with his blood by grace through faith. The very last reference to this in the Bible is in Revelation 19, forward looking to Armageddon. It is with the pouring out of vial 7 in Revelation 16, and it says, these are the last words of Jesus within the confines of Daniel's 70th week. The sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. All the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Nakedness is a consequence of uncovered sin, and Jesus is the covering for sin. So when it's talking about, I will show the nations thy nakedness and the kingdoms thy shame, it's a reference to Jesus coming to those who are not his and what he's going to do to them, which is destruction. I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vile. I will set thee as a gazing stock. And it will come to pass that they that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste, who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for thee? Art thou better than Populus? No, that was situate. What? Art thou better than Populus? No, that was situate among the rivers, that had the waters round about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. It is referring me to Jeremiah 46, which is one of the chapters, the cities of the nations that fall right before Babylon, and Amos 6:2. So let's go there. Amos 6:2. Amos 6:1 says, Woe to them that are at ease in Zion and trust in the mountains of Samaria, which are named chief of the nations, to whom the house of Israel came. Pass ye unto Calneh and see, and from thence go ye to Hamath the great, then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Yeah, that I don't know why it's leading me there. Jeremiah 46. Sometimes it makes sense where my Bible directs me sometimes it doesn't. It made sense to the people who wrote it. Oh, it's just talking about the God of Israel punishing people who are against him, who worship gods that are not him. Okay, continuing on. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put and Lubim were thy helpers. Yet she was carried away, Nineveh. She went into captivity. Her young children were also dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets, and they cast lots for her honorable men, and all the great men were bound in chains. That's being linked to Isaiah 13, which is the destruction of Babylon. So it's interesting how all of these are being linked together, final destructions of cities, because of people not being Christ's. The burden of, and this just goes to underscore the point, that the burden of Nineveh and the burden of Babylon. And I'm going to go to Jeremiah 46. It just took me there. That's one of the chapters, like I said, that's one of the cities of the nations that falls. Jeremiah 46 through 51, where 50 and 51 are Babylon. But 40 and 46 are, the burden, Egypt. Yep. The word of the Lord, yep. The burden of Egypt is in Isaiah 19. And Ethiopia, the burden of, let's just go back here and look. Isaiah 19 is the burden of, the burden of Egypt. And Ethiopia was in here also. Chapter 18 of Isaiah 18. And then Ethiopia was also mentioned as one of the places that gets destroyed in Zephaniah 2, which Nineveh is also mentioned in. So, like I said, these are all very closely tied together and related. So I'm giving you guys references so that you can go look this up yourself. But as I kind of highlighted before I started this video, it's literally just finding different ways to talk about the destruction of the city. Yes, the empire was destroyed in history, but there will come a time when Nineveh will fall entirely and never rise again. And that's prophecy. And that's what we're talking about here, is the prophetic implication of that. So continuing on in verse 11 of chapter 3. Thou also shalt be drunken. Thou shalt be hid. Thou shalt seek strength because of the enemy. And it's not talking about being hid in Christ, because it says thou shalt be drunken. Remember in 1 Thessalonians 5, it says, let us watch and be... No. What does it say? Let me just read it. Ye brethren are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Well, that's talking about the second coming clearly. You're children of the light and of the day. You're not of the night nor of darkness. So that means none of that has anything to do with you. Let us not sleep as others do. Let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night. And they that be drunk are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for an helmet the hope of salvation. For God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, we should live together with him. So it's talking about the drunken people that he's going to come as a thief in the night to, who are naked because of their uncovered shame. Every single one of these references is to the day of the Lord, when Jesus will return and destroy sin and wickedness. So it's just interesting how many other scriptures are tied into this book. That's actually kind of fascinating. So it says, thou also shalt be drunken, thou shalt be hid, thou shalt seek strength because of the enemy. All thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs. If they be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. So that was actually interesting. I knew that there was a reference forthcoming to that. And I wrote a book in 2017. It was my second book ever, called The Judgment of the Summer Fruit, and actually spent a good deal of time looking at figs and references to figs and summer fruit. And if you're talking about an actual time of year and not just an analogy to that, like good fruit, bad fruit, I mean, that's simple. Like, you don't need a time of the year for that. But if you're talking about summer fruit and first ripe figs, like, there's a legitimate time of year associated with that. So it's like, if these are not just analogies and there is actually being a reference to time of year, what would that time of the year be? So that was kind of part of the point of that book. We were talking about first ripe figs. And I remembered something that I had come across, which had nothing to do with the context at all. It was actually of the Babylonian captivity, Jeremiah 24, if you guys saw my post earlier. But I was recalled to how amusing it was to read through talking about first ripe figs versus very naughty figs. Not just naughty figs, but very naughty figs. And so much so that they could not be eaten because they were so bad. And that was just funny. It was so hilarious. It was just a reference to first ripe figs. If you guys haven't read my post, go check that out. To me, it was hilarious. But my Bible's actually directing me to Revelation 6, 12, and 13. So I am going to suggest that this may or may not have implication. I'm not going to go down this rabbit trail, though, because this is a larger issue with understanding of Seal 6. The seals, I guess I will go down this rabbit trail. For those of you who are familiar with my Revelation study, hopefully this is not new information. If you are not familiar with my Revelation study, this might be something you have not heard. The seals are what I call opening ceremonies. They're opened on day 1, and the effects of them last from day 1 through day 2,520. They're essentially a program overview of the entirety of the 70th week. You'll have deception from day 1 through day 2,520, seal 1. At various people, but you'll still have that concept, that theme overarching. You will have peace being taken from the earth and active war through the entire 2,520 days, and famine, and death, and wild beasts of the earth, and martyrdom, and natural disasters. And Seal 6 is probably the best representation of the effects being laid out of the opening of Seal 1 from day 1 all the way through the end. And there are actually specific ties that it bookmarks evidence of Seal 6 showing up through the entire 2,520 days. If this is new to you, I would just check out my Revelation 6 content, especially with regard to the 6th seal, because I lay this all out in writing, and sometimes it's easier to see in writing than it is to hear in speaking or listening. But in Revelation 6:12, it says, "And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake." Okay? The first earthquake that we're told about after this is in Revelation 8. In verse 5. "The angel took the censer, filled it with fire of the altar, cast it into the earth. There were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake." Okay, so that's more than likely the earthquake that is tied to the opening of Seal 6. And it doesn't occur specifically at the opening of Seal 6 on day 1. It actually occurs, it's talking about something that will occur after the opening of Seal 6. Everything here is talking about what's going to occur after the opening of Seal 6 from the commencement to the conclusion of the 70th week. So you've got the earthquake in Revelation 8:5. "And lo, there was a great earthquake." Okay, next. "The sun became as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." That's viewing the sun and the moon through some other thing. And that's actually in Revelation 9, trumpet 5, when the pit is opened. "He opened the bottomless pit. There arose a smoke out of the pit, and the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit." So what you're seeing is specific events that are bookmarked in Revelation tied to Seal 6. So the great earthquake in Revelation 8:5, the opening of the pit, which causes the sun to be darkened and the sun become black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Those are similes. They're metaphoric language to describe visible. Like to the human eye, the sun will be black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, because they will be being viewed through the smoke of the pit when it's open. Next, "The stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind." That's going to be Revelation 12 and beyond, when you have the war in heaven and the angels are cast down to earth and confined there for the second half of the 70th week. But also up to and including the second coming, when it says the sun will be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. The stars falling from heaven is likened to, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And so that's going to be things that could occur from Revelation 12 when the war in heaven, like I said, and they're cast down from second heaven to the earth and confined to earth for the duration of the remaining duration of the 70th week. And Satan gets wroth with the woman, goes to make war with the remnant of her seed, and those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And then finally, the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. That is in conjunction with the pouring out of vial 7, which it specifically says is every island fled away and the mountains were not found in Revelation 16:20. So Revelation 6 actually provides a program overview of specific things that will take place from the commencement to the conclusion throughout those 2,520 days, and specifically bookmark 2 other events into the 70th week. So when we're looking at Nahum and it says a reference to fig trees and the first ripe figs and being shaken, in my Bible footnotes, Revelation 6 through 12, it's not talking about actual figs and fig trees. If it is actually related to Revelation 6 and 12, it would be talking about fig trees casteth her untimely figs as she is shaken of a mighty wind, referencing the stars falling from heaven. I'm not sure that that's a true statement and a true link, but it's interesting that my Bible connected those 2 things, because that would be second half of the 70th week all the way up to the conclusion, which again ties into the timing of the second coming and the first ripe figs, which was, again, the whole point of my book, The Judgment of the Summer Fruit, was to try to find timing related to if it's not just metaphorical language and it actually has value with finding a time of the year, what would be that time of the year? So that was literally the whole purpose of that book. And what I had been recalled to memory about was the very naughty figs. And this is talking about the Babylonian captivity. Again, it has nothing to do with Nahum. It has to do with Israel. And it basically says that there were 2 groups of people, faithful and faithless. The faithful were the good figs, and the faithless were the very naughty figs, the evil figs. And it basically said that the evil figs were going to die in captivity, but God always preserves a remnant according to the election of grace. And those would be the good figs. And they would come out the other side to go back to Israel to rebuild their second temple, eventually to rebuild Jerusalem, all of that. So it has nothing to do with this, but it was just funny, and I remembered the reference to the first ripe figs. So Jeremiah 24:2. One basket. Actually, I'll just start in verse 1. This is total segue, but it's explaining the comment. And I told someone, I was like, this is King James, so you should read it dramatized with a British accent. And it in my head, it just was so funny. The Lord showed me, and behold, 2 baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord after that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the princes of Judah with the carpenters and smiths from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. So again, it's talking about the Babylonian captivity. 1 basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe. So there was the reference to first ripe figs. And the other basket had very, very naughty figs. Very naughty. It's just funny. Not just naughty figs, but very naughty figs, which could not be eaten because they were so bad. They were so bad. So that's just kind of funny. So I got a chuckle out of that, and I thought I'd share with you guys. But going back to Nahum in chapter 3, verse 12. All thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs. If they be shaken, they shall fall even into the mouth of the eater. Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thine enemies, and fire shall devour thy bars. Draw thee water. Draw thee waters for the siege. Fortify thy strongholds. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Make strong the brick kiln. There shall the fire devour thee. The sword shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. And again, this goes to Joel 1. Make thyself many as the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the locusts. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and flee away. Thy crowned are as the locusts, and thy captains as the great grasshoppers, which camp in the hedges in a cold day, but when the sun arises, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. So it's just talking about the scattering of the officials. Thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. They're going to die. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth them. So they are going to die, and they will not come back. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the news of thee shall clap the hands over thee, for upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually. So, I said everybody is happy that they got destroyed because everyone was affected by their badness. So the last thing I will leave you here with is the similarity in Joel. And again, Joel is talking about Jerusalem, Judah and Jerusalem, not Nineveh. But there is similarity of the references to, like I said, the cankerworm, the grasshoppers, locusts. And obviously there's a locust army from Revelation Trumpet 5, and there's a 100 million man army, which are supernatural in origin, and that is what Joel 2 describes as probably the combination of both of those. So it is, the whole book of Joel is after the fifth trumpet, from fifth trumpet till the end when Jesus actually comes back, roars out of Zion. So Joel is a very end times book in its entirety. And when I mean end times, I mean from trumpet 5 and after. It says, the word of the Lord that came to Joel the son of Pethuel. Hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? Tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm hath left, the locust eaten. That which the locust hath left, hath the cankerworm eaten. And that which the cankerworm hath left, the caterpillar eaten. Awake, ye drunkards, and weep and howl, all ye drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. Also a reference to lions. Nahum 2 talked about where is the dwelling place of the lions, the feeding place of the young lions, where the lion, even the old lion, walked. The lions whelp, and none made them afraid, but the lion did tear in pieces, etc. So it says, for the nation is come upon my land strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath cheek teeth of a great lion. He hath laid my vine waste, and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare, and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white. So that again is talking about Judah and Jerusalem. Nahum is talking about Nineveh, but there's very much similarity of language to talk about the destructive capability of the Lord against his enemies because they are not in Christ. So that's why I prefaced this video by saying if you haven't watched the intro or part 1 yet, I do the setup work about linking all of these passages together even more than I did today, so that we understand what time period we are talking about. So that is the book of Nahum. The capital of the old Assyrian Empire, Nineveh, modern day Mosul in Iraq, is going to have a final destruction, and wickedness will never rise from it again. So what does that mean will occur there in the future? We don't know. We won't be here to find out. But clearly something, and Jesus is going to put an end to it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. But this was interesting to go through, and we will be on to the next minor prophet in a bit. I think I know where I want to go, but I'm not quite sure. But you'll know when I know. I'll see you guys later.